Hello, everybody. I've written an article on Substack and davidcurry.org. What Christians need to know about the Ahmadiyya Muslims and why they're so persecuted. Back in 2022, I sat in a small private dinner with leaders of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and the meeting was quiet and even a bit secretive because some of the people were celebrating the fact they'd just been released from prison. They were Ahmadiyya Muslims who had been jailed for their faith. And as a member of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, I had been part of the group that lobbied for their release. But until that night, I did not grasp how deep the schism was inside the Muslim world over the Ahmadiyya and why they're so brutally persecuted and unfairly persecuted. Here's what I came to see. Ahmadiyya Muslims are not being hunted because they're violent. They are not producing extremists. They're being targeted because their theology offends powerful religious gatekeepers, and governments have turned the theological dispute into a criminal one. If you care about religious freedom, you need to know about the Ahmadiyya and why so many Muslims consider them heretics and why that still does not justify persecution. It should matter to everybody because once the state decides that a minority beliefs aren't just wrong but illegal, then nobody is safe. Nobody would be safe. The same laws that crush the Ahmadis will be turned against Christians and reform-minded Muslims, against anyone who crosses a theological line. That's not the way societies should be run at all. There should be religious freedom. People have the right to believe what they choose. The movement began in the 1800s in British India. They still consider themselves Muslim. They read the Quran, they revere Muhammad, but they believe that they have another promised Messiah. And from a Christian point of view, I don't share that theology, but the belief is not terrorism. It's their sincerely held conviction. So the flashpoint is this. Muslims believe Muhammad is the final prophet, full stop. Ahmadis say, yes, he's the law-bearing prophet, but God can send a lesser non-law-bearing prophet inside of Islam. But to many Muslim scholars, that sounds like crossing a red line. And it's not just wrong, but it attacks a boundary of Islam. And that's why places like Pakistan, calling yourself an Ahmadi and building a mosque, the building to worship and calling it a mosque, that is a red line for them. First, here's the pattern. First, the religious leaders brand them heretics, then lawmakers encode the judgment into constitutions, then the mobs and local officials feel licensed to harass, attack, and even kill the Ahmadi because they don't really belong. That's not theology anymore. That's state-sponsored apartheid. So I think back to that dinner in 2022 and the men who were sitting across their table. These were not radicals. They're peaceful, educated, integrated into social life. They just believe differently. You don't have to agree with their theology. I don't agree with their theology, but no one should be jailed, beaten, or stripped of basic rights just because of how they pray or believe God was sent. If we let that happen to them in silence, we're eroding the very principle that protects us all. So I hope you'll go to Substack or davidcurry.org, read the article, let it challenge you. Do you disagree? Let me know. Please comment. Have a great day.